More now on our top story tonight. President Putin announced today that he recognizes the independence of two separatist regions in eastern Ukraine. And on top of that, he's ordered what he is calling peacekeeping troops to those regions. That all escalating already high tension with the West. In response, the U.S. and some European countries have announced sanctions against Russia. So all of this, of course, a major step potentially toward an invasion in Ukraine. For some more analysis, I want to bring in Brett Bruen, the former director of global engagement during the Obama years. Thank you for being back with us. It seems like the world has changed. Things have gotten even more dramatic since we spoke on Friday. So let me, in practical terms, so folks at home can understand these two major things that Putin did today: acknowledging the separatists as independent, and two, more dramatically, now moving in peacekeeping troops, and of course, big quotes on the peacekeeping. What does that practically mean? Because it seems we're a whole lot closer to war than we were just yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, look, what Putin did was take a big chunk of eastern Ukraine and essentially, for all intents and purposes, said it's mine. And on top of that, he insinuated in not so subtle terms that the rest of Ukraine and perhaps other former Soviet republics would be his too. And so this was a pretty bold, brash statement, even for Putin. And yes, certainly over the years, he's insinuated that he had gripes and concerns and this was unfair. But today he sort of ripped off any pretense and just dove in with 2 feet into this uncharted territory of international affairs. And as someone who's a recovering diplomat, I can tell you that it has set alarm bells off in foreign ministries around the world. And then also, let's be honest here. I mean, Putin may call them peacekeeping troops, but there is nothing about a peace that these troops are being sent in for. They are going in to lay claim not only to these parts of Luhansk and Donetsk that separatists already control, but to push further into Ukraine.
Michael McFaul, the U.S. ambassador to Moscow, tweeted out something that's getting a lot of attention. Certainly he is an expert when it comes to this. He says, when you describe Russian soldiers invading Ukraine right now as, quote, peacekeepers, even when you use quotation marks, you are using language that Putin wants you to use. Call it what it is, an invasion. Is the ordering of these troops, even though the exact when of all this is unclear, is this literally the beginning of the invasion? Putin is ordering troops in. We've been talking about an invasion. Tonight, are we there?
I completely agree with former Ambassador McCall. I think this is absolutely an invasion. This territory is Ukrainian, and this is the first time in recent history that we have seen one country in Europe send troops into another country without authorization either from that country or from the United Nations. So this is a unprecedented step. And I also think it's important to understand that peacekeeping is a mission authorized normally by the UN Security Council. Some leader cannot simply deem that sending their forces into another country is a peacekeeping mission. So I agree. We should call this an invasion. This is unjustified and unprecedented.
You made the point very clearly. Thank you. And just to point out, neither of these areas is recognized independently by the U.S. or any other world power, and they're actually considered terrorist organizations by the Ukrainian government itself. So when we talk about separatist regions, let's keep in mind what these two areas represent. So the U.S. has countered all of this by saying, and other countries as well, saying now we're going to put some sanctions into place. Not the big bad sanctions that Biden's been talking about for weeks, but some baby step form of sanctions. Is that nearly, if you're going to call this an invasion, which you just did, are baby step sanctions even enough, or are we about to go down a rabbit hole real fast?
Yeah, I'm really concerned by the small scale of sanctions that the White House announced this afternoon. I mean, this is a remarkable step that Russia has taken to violate the sovereignty of another country. And while I understand you want to have some arrows left in your quiver, we have to send a very clear message both to Moscow, but also to other countries that may be looking at Putin and saying, well, this seems like a good idea. He got off pretty well. So I worry, and I was sitting in the Situation Room in 2014 when Putin first invaded these territories in eastern Ukraine, as well as took the Crimean Peninsula. And I argued back then, and I will continue to argue, that we have to go harder. It's the only thing that Putin responds to. When we are forceful, when we come in strong rather than slowly escalating, that is when we see a change in the Kremlin's calculus.
But all of this is happening at a time where there's not a real appetite for war in this country. Biden takes a lot of, a lot of credit and blame in some cases for getting out of Afghanistan. But most Americans wanted us out of war. We don't want to get into another one. But based on how brazen and bold Putin is being, is there any scenario with whatever happens next that America does not get sucked into this to a far greater extent than what is being discussed right now?
Well, we are already in this. Let's just be clear about that. And I think also at the same time, there is not any scenario in which American forces are engaged in combat missions. That being said, there is a lot that they can and they should be doing, both to shore up Ukraine, but also some of those other NATO allies in the region, Poland, Romania, the Baltic states. Additionally, there is a lot that we can do to put additional pressure on Putin, not just these economic sanctions, but there's a whole lot of intelligence that we have that would be deeply damaging to Putin. And I think we ought to look at where he is most vulnerable at home. There's a lot of disagreement and division within Russian society about what Putin's doing. We ought to focus on those points and exploit those vulnerabilities.
We've done sanctions before. We've had all the bluster. We've released intelligence that otherwise would have stayed classified. Nothing seems to deter him. Today, as you said, very bold action. And again, if he's bold enough to do what we saw today, you really can't put any kind of realistic expectation or limit on what he is willing, how far he's willing to go at this point. Isn't that fair?
Well, yes, though I would say if Putin has shown the world one thing, it is the power of information warfare. And this is why I continue to argue that we need an information invasion of Russia. What was on display this evening on televisions across Russia was the power of propaganda. And what we can do, and we have the tools to do, is to pierce that and to allow Russian citizens to see what is happening. Because let's be honest here, this is going to be a very messy affair. And it's important that Russians understand what is transpiring in Ukraine. And also is important that they see the corruption, the mismanagement across the country. That obviously isn't going to solve something overnight, but it will add pressure to Putin. It will add pressure to some of his allies and will raise questions about whether they want to continue down this path.
Much of which Putin, I'm sure, has tried at least to calculate and is still taking this gamble, still taking these brazen steps. What stops him and deters him, I think, is a huge mystery. I want to ask you one more thing before we let you go, and this is a point I made when we talked on Friday. The news came out over the weekend about this kill list, that U.S. intelligence has a kill list here, the people that, if there is a war, that Putin wants to either A, kill, or B, put into camps. And putting people into camps certainly brings up a horrific part of human history when we talk about that. So again, now that we're even further down the path to war, what is the goal here for Putin? To control Ukrainians or to kill them?
Well, I think the overall goal is to inspire fear in the hearts of those who would oppose him and oppose his efforts. It is why also I think it is so important that leaders here in Washington have a plan and, quite frankly, start executing on that plan to get Ukrainian democracy activists, journalists. I mean, even on that list were those who support LGBTQ rights and other fundamental freedoms. We have to do more and not just stand by as Putin decides to persecute and potentially kill thousands of Ukrainians who have fought for basic rights and freedoms. This, I think, is a real dangerous period, not only for Ukraine, but for those ideals that we hold so dear.
Well said. A lot changed since we talked on Friday. We'll see where the world is tomorrow night. I hope you keep us in mind and come back. I've enjoyed the conversations and the insight. I think we both are understand that we're on the brink of something that is going to be pretty bad, for lack of a sophisticated phrase. Brett Bruen, thanks for your expertise, sir. We appreciate it.